I lived there, I ran a travel agency there, and I'm about to save you from making the same tourist mistakes that 90% of visitors make. So in this video, I'm gonna share some insider tips and general facts about Edinburgh. No, it's not Edinburgh, it's not Edinburgh, it's not Edinburgh, it's Edinburgh. Edinburgh. Yes, Edinburgh is a 10 out of 10 city looks-wise. So I totally get it when tourists stop right in the middle of the street to take a photo, but do remember that Edinburgh, even the old town, is actually a functioning city with plenty of locals who are just trying to get to work or do their daily shopping. So Edinburgh is as pretty as a movie set, but it's also a place where people live, so just remember that when you come there. On that note, if you want to stay on good terms with the locals in Edinburgh, then I wouldn't, sit in the pub and brag about that amazing Airbnb you've just rented over in the old town. Because Edinburgh is a pretty small city and loads of locals have been priced out of their own apartments, especially in the central parts of town. So people here aren't that fond of Airbnb. So maybe just get a hotel. There are so many cool hotels in Edinburgh, and I've linked some of my favorites in the description below. There's a direct tram from the airport to the city centre, but the Airlink 100, which is a bus, is usually my go-to when I need to get into town, as it only takes about 30 minutes. I usually hate buses, but the tram in Edinburgh from the airport and into town, it just seems like there are so many unnecessary stops that it just takes forever, and it's more expensive than the bus, so there's no need to take that. If you just want to get straight into the city centre, go by the bus. And the taxis, guys, don't get me started on the taxis. They are well expensive. I think it's like £35 to get from the airport to the city centre, and Edinburgh is a small city, so unless you've got like mobility issues or you just want to get straight to your hotel, I would just go by the bus. I get it. The Royal Mile, Victoria Street, the whole Old Town area is drop dead gorgeous, and if it's your first time in Edinburgh, you will be spending quite a lot of your time in there. But you're missing out big time if you spend all your time in Edinburgh in the Old Town. So I'd recommend at least going over to Stockbridge. But areas like Leith, Bruntsfield and Morningside are filled with cool shops, cafes, restaurants and pubs. And these are actually filled with locals and not other tourists. This really surprised me when I moved to Edinburgh. Everybody seems so much more friendly. Maybe it's just a thing, the further north you go in Britain, the nicer the people are. And up in Edinburgh, you greet your bus driver when you go into the bus, and you always say cheers and thank you and bye when you leave the bus, and you probably queue up if it's a popular bus stop. That's just the way things work here, and I love that. By the way, buses are either contactless or exact money only, and they do prefer coins. I'd highly recommend going to the Highlands if you got more than maybe 3 or 4 days in Edinburgh. But if you can't make it up to the proper Highlands, I've got you covered. There's a public bus down to Balerno, and that's not a place in Italy, although it sounds like it. It's the end station southwest of Edinburgh. So jump on the bus down there, and then you can walk all the way across a place called, or an area called, the Pentland Hills. And that's a bit like being up in the Highlands, but you've also got an amazing view over Edinburgh. And on the other side, like on the east side of the Pentland Hills, there's a little pub, and you can wait there until the next public bus comes and picks you up and going back to Edinburgh city centre. I went there with my maid on like a May day where the weather was just perfect, and it's honestly one of the best days I ever had in Edinburgh. Guys, you don't actually have to rub that poor dog's nose when you come to Edinburgh. I know the tour guides will probably tell you that you rub his nose for luck, but I'm pretty sure that this whole rub the dog's nose was started by some weird tour guide. Greyfriars Bobby was actually a real dog with a genuinely touching story, as he guarded his owner's grave for I think 14 years after the owner died. So there's no point in rubbing the poor dog's nose. Just enjoy the statue, maybe have a pint in the Greyfriars pub and head into the cemetery. Edinburgh is a pretty tiny city compared to other major European cities, so unless you've got mobility issues, there's absolutely no need to sit on those very expensive buses. Granted, it did take me a few weeks living in Edinburgh before I dared to try haggis. And it's still not my favorite ever dish, but it is pretty good. It basically tastes like a really nice, spicy, savory stuffing. So you need to get it with neeps and tatties, and that's not a Scottish swear word. It's turnips and potatoes. And of course a nice crisp pint, or maybe a can of Iron Brew. Like I said before, if you have the time, the Scottish Highlands are insane. Just insane. There are loads of tour companies that goes up there every day. I've tried a lot of them, and I've also worked with a lot of them when I ran my travel agency, and I've got to say that Rabbi's, which is also, I think they're the biggest in town, they're just the best. I'm not affiliated with them, I'm not sponsored or anything, but I've just worked with so many different ones, and Rabbi's are just the best. I really hate to break it to you, but telling every Scottish person that your great-great-grandmother was a MacDonald, they don't really care. But there are some people in Edinburgh who will definitely listen to your stories, and those are the salesmen on the Royal Mile, and they will definitely sell you a scarf or a kilt with your family tartans on it. Dean Village is gorgeous, and definitely go there, but it's also pretty tiny, just as Edinburgh in itself, and I'm sure a lot of tourists have seen that they need to go to the Dean Village, and then they get there and they're like, is that it? So go to Dean Village, but use it as a starting point and then walk north via the Water of Leith. It's about 30 minutes of riverside beauty, and you'll end up in one of my favorite areas, which is Stockbridge, where you can get some food at the Scran and Scally and maybe head over and grab a pint at the Bailey Bar, which is a proper local spot and probably one of the best pubs in Edinburgh. You can get to Glasgow in like 50 minutes, or you can get the train up to Fort William in the Highlands, up to Inverness, and you can even go down to Newcastle and Durham down in England if you fancy that. When I ran my travel agency, I had this mum. I had a mother who wanted to take her daughter to the Highlands, and they didn't want to drive. So I put this whole trip together for them, where they took the train to Fort William and over to Glenfinnan, and then the bus to the Isle of Skye. So if you don't want to drive and you don't want to go on a big group tour, you can actually visit the Highlands or the whole of Scotland just by public transport. August in Edinburgh is ridiculous. The population literally doubles, the prices increase so much, and the hotels are insanely expensive and booked out like months in advance. And that is of course because of the Fringe Festival, which is one of the largest, if not the largest, comedy festivals in the world. So if you're coming for that, great, have fun. I'm sure you will have fun because it's a comedy festival. But if you just want to experience Edinburgh, then August is not the ideal month to visit. Funny little story. When I lived in Edinburgh, my mother came over to visit in January, and on her first day there, I think it was 16 degrees and sunny in January, and like we were just like, what the F is going on here? 2 days later, 2 degrees and rain. So that says a lot about Scottish weather. Dress for all seasons every day, and bring layers. Layers is key. It is mad just how proper, nice and stunning Edinburgh actually is. In the rain, in the snow, in the blistering sun that you won't probably see, Edinburgh is gorgeous. You're in for a treat if you're going to Edinburgh. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel for more travel content, and let me know what you think about Edinburgh if you've been there in the comments. Thanks.